informational session. And so the overview, we will talk about the Green Fund, who can apply, the application process, review committee, and student involvement, approved grant proposals, and the Q&A at the end. So for the Q&A, if you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to put it in the chat, either to everyone or message it to Sophia Corning privately if you want it to be a private message, and Sophia will call on you at the end so you can ask your question. So first, I'm really happy to introduce Dean Rasmussen, who we've been working with to make this Green Fund happen. So she will tell you a little bit about the history of the Green Fund.
Thank you so much, Amy. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and glad that I could be part of this info session tonight. I thought what I would do is just very quickly give you a little bit of background and history about how the Green Fund came about, because it's a fantastic example of a true student-staff collaboration that was born out of a really interesting meeting. It was interesting for me, certainly, that happened last fall with a group of students who are part of various RSOs and other organizations on campus that are interested in sustainability issues. And it was part of the quarterly Student Perspective series, which is a curated set of meetings for students and a small group of university trustees. And back in the fall, the undergraduate liaison to the Board of Trustees, Ridgely Knapp, suggested that we delve into the topic of sustainability on campus, and specifically how students engage with sustainability issues. So we thought that was a really interesting topic, and the students who participated, many of whom are here with me today on this info session, did a fantastic job of pulling together a report, a memo, and just a really interesting set of discussion questions that the trustees certainly found helpful, and I found helpful. And one of the suggestions that the students had was that we establish at the university a way for students to apply for money that would enable them to do sustainability related projects and potentially research in a way that wasn't really available currently at the university. And so I thought, gee, this is something we should be able to do. And here we are several months later with the Green Fund ready to go next academic year. So the whole purpose of this fund, as I said, is to give students, graduate and undergraduate, opportunities to engage in short-term or long-term projects or research, and to give them as much flexibility as possible to do that work, either as a single person project, as a group project, as a project that engages faculty and staff. We wanted it to be as fluid and flexible as possible. So the fund for the first pilot year, next year, will be $50,000. That's how much Campus and Student Life has committed. We're going to have 2 application cycles, which we'll talk about more later in the presentation. And each application cycle will yield up to $25,000 in grant money for various projects.
Yeah. So, who can apply to the Green Fund? So as Dean Rasmussen just covered, UChicago undergraduate students, UChicago graduate students, and student groups such as RSOs can apply as individuals or in teams. And so I'll let Dean Rasmussen talk about the application process and a little bit about the time frame for fund dispersal.
So as you can see here, we've set it up, at least for the pilot year, to have 2 cycles. So students can submit a proposal at the end of the 3rd week, I believe it is, of the autumn quarter, which is here, as you can see, Friday, October 16th. And then we'll have a second cycle for students who want to apply later in the year, and that deadline will be, is that right, April 22nd? That doesn't seem like winter quarter. Is that winter quarter? Anyway, I guess maybe it is. Anyway, I think that date might be wrong, because winter quarter should be sometime in February, I think, not April, but we'll double check on that. So the idea would be that there'd be a winter quarter deadline as well. The key thing that we want to make sure that you understand is that depending on what application cycle you fall within, your project will determine how long you have to spend the grant that you have. So there isn't an expectation, for example, that if you submit your application in October that you somehow have to spend all your grant and have your project be completely finished by, say, the beginning of the spring quarter. That'll be totally dictated by the particulars of your project or your research. And as I said earlier, a maximum of $25,000 will be awarded each cycle. Obviously, we don't want to disadvantage students who want to apply later in the year. So that's why we've set that limit.
Right. So for those two different application cycles, there's two avenues that potential applicants can go down. The first of those is for grant proposals. And this is for those projects that aren't necessarily research-based, but are more so interested in applying the skills, the academic skills, whatever technical skills that students may have towards increasing sustainability, environmentalism on campus, as well as in our campus community. So a grant proposal for this will look like having an executive summary, which, as I think most people can figure out, is essentially just an overview of the project, a purpose statement, which essentially says, again, what you're doing, why you're doing this, who is it going to impact. And then an application information, which is, of course, your CV of the student project leads, just to give an understanding and a background for the people who are applying, any ethos that they may have as well. A more in-depth project description, which is going to go into step-by-step, at least as you see fit or as the applicant sees fit, to include as much information as possible to make it a thorough description. It doesn't have to have all the minutia hammered out. Of course, that's impossible at the beginning. And then a really important aspect of the whole entire Green Fund is working on impact and making sure that this money is being used to create an impact in whatever community the project is being based in. So that's really important to make sure that you have a metric or multiple metrics in order to gauge that. A project timeline, again, as detailed as you see fit, but again, it's impossible to have it be completely laid out at the beginning. And then also an itemized budget. Moving on, the second avenue that people can go down is research proposals. And this is more so traditional research, as Dean Rasmussen alluded to earlier. This is more so in the STEM or more so hard sciences, as well as the social sciences, but it's less so project-based and more so solidly about research. So in addition to, as is bolded, a rigorous methodology about the data that's going to be collected and analyzed, it's also important that you have some sort of mentor that is a faculty member who has agreed to advise this research. So there's a number of different networks that you can find in order to have these faculty members, as well as just doing the old reach out cold email and seeing if they get back to you, which I think most of us have done successfully and unsuccessfully. And then we also have to talk about the communication. This is another important aspect of being a researcher in general, and also for the Green Fund. How can we make this something, this money have a broader impact than just yourself or the direct stakeholder that you're working with, but also the broader community. There's like a trend here, sort of as much impact as possible. And then in terms of the project proposals, again, just talking about how your research project will be implemented over time, the impact that it will have, stakeholders, so on and so forth. And then as well as a contingency plan to make sure, and just to show the reviewers that you have thought about the inevitable pitfalls that your research project will have, because they will happen. Nothing is ever as smooth as you like it to be. So just showing that you've thought about that and you have a plan in order to back that up, whatever pitfall you may fall into. So these are different examples of projects that you can do. So for the research proposals, you can conduct an energy audit of a campus building or analyze the impact of GHG emissions. I know that there's been a number of projects like this that could have needed funding in the past. So this is an opportunity to revamp those or bring them back and maybe have a bigger chance of having some impact there. And then in terms of the project proposals, you could have composting in campus cafes, as the PSI has been trying for a while. So maybe this will help in making that a possibility. Creating community gardens or greenhouses, community UChicago, Woodlawn, whatever you see fit as being in your community and also UChicago's, or also just implementing a zero waste initiative, which is incredibly important for UChicago sustainability and environmentalism as well.
So the next thing is talking about the review process. Who is going to be reading your application? So proposals will be reviewed in 2 rounds by faculty, staff, and students at UChicago with expertise in environment, climate change, resource management, sustainability, and other related topics. So the entire review process occurs after the grant proposals are due. And so for round 1, there's a group of reviewers with expertise. So this is going to be comprised more of faculty and staff. And they will be responsible for reading and scoring the proposals that follow a clear and quantified rubric with comments on their own time. And then round 2, the rubrics will be passed on to the second group, which is comprised of staff, faculty, and students. We really wanted to incorporate students into the review process because we think it's really important that students are able to have a voice in the decision-making process. So the second group will meet in person to discuss the rubrics from the first round and also the qualitative merits of your proposals to choose which ones to fund in the end.
So as Amy said, we were really interested in having students have a voice and a choice in what they wanted the money going towards. So undergraduate and graduate students are all invited to participate in the entire Green Fund review process. And this application will include a statement of interest, as well as some other questions about your background in sustainability, your name, your major, other fun facts like that that we might want to have in making a decision. These are going to be due May 31st at midnight. And then from there, there will be a review process. There will be a general call to participate in round 1 and or round 2 during winter and autumn quarters. So that's weeks 4 and 5. Now, it is important to note that you can be both a reviewer on the review committee as well as being a potential applicant in the future. Just because you are in the pool of the review committee does not negate your ability to also apply for funding. That being said, it is very important that you let the review committee know that you are going to be excusing yourself from this round, as that's obviously a conflict of interest. So again, doesn't preclude you being on this review committee, does not preclude you from being able to apply, but it does mean that you can't apply during the process that you are reviewing in.
So as we just talked about earlier, there is that quantified rubric and a number of criteria for reviewing the proposals. And so these criteria are related to, the impact of, like the projected impact of the project or the feasibility, for instance. And so that rubric will be used in the first round, and it will be shared with the potential applicants and posted on the Green Fund webpage before the autumn 2020 deadline. So make sure to follow the UChicago Environmental Alliance Facebook page and the Green Fund webpage to stay updated with when that rubric will be shared. And we'll make sure that all potential applicants will know when those criteria are posted. And so also, and then an important note is that the Green Fund Review Committee has the discretion to fund a grant proposal fully, partially, or not at all. And then so Dean Rasmussen will talk about this slide for approved grant proposals.
Thank you. So once successful applicants have been told that their proposal has been funded, what we will do is we'll work, and by we I mean staff and campus and student life, will work closely with those applicants to set up the requisite accounts and make sure that they get their funds as quickly as possible and in the most appropriate way to cover their project expenses, whatever they may be. And they could be a variety of things, anything from stipends to equipment, to services, to printing costs, and so on and so forth. So there'll be that sort of personalized advising and attention to each applicant and each project so that they can get their funds flowing as quickly as possible. As I just mentioned, the Green Fund grant can be used for a variety of different expenses. Obviously, part of your proposal will be to describe what those expenses are to justify them in your budget. But the idea, again, is to try to be as flexible as possible so projects and research can be successful. And we are willing to fund stipends so that we can enable student-led research, particularly when having a team of people to collect data becomes really critical to a project or researcher's success. And then just continuing on in terms of some of the follow-up requirements, I mean, obviously a real major goal philosophically of having a green fund on campus and making this fund available to folks is to disseminate results and to have impact on campus. And so it's going to be really important for successful applicants to prepare, we don't want them to be super long, but they do need to be somewhat substantive summary reports that basically just describe how the project is going, including any changes that have become necessary, which just is inevitable usually for any kind of significant project or research. Obviously, too, the summary report should include a discussion of results from the project or research and just provide some useful information that can be then potentially shared with other prospective applicants in the community at large. Obviously, if there are any deliverables or presentations that were part of the original proposal, they need to be submitted and shared at the requisite time. And also, too, and again, this will be done with CSL assistance, we will work with grantees to make sure that their budget is updated appropriately and that they have all the right receipts for any expenses incurred. The whole point here is that there will be ongoing advising and assistance to grantees, check-ins to make sure that their project is going well and that any assistance and support they need is provided.
Okay, so then next steps for applicants. The first is to join, or possibly if you're interested, join the review fund or the Green Fund Review Board. Again, the applications for these are going to be May 31st. At midnight, and you can apply at this bit.ly link. We will be reviewing those shortly after that and getting back to everyone as soon as possible. And then the next step after that is, if you're interested, apply for the Green Fund itself. So again, the first round, mark your calendars around October 16th. Again, with COVID, that's what we're shooting for, but you know, everything is taken with a grain of salt right now. But check in with the website. Everything will be communicated through there, as well as the links that Sophia has posted. So social media will also be a mode for us to communicate any updates with the Green Fund regarding changes of dates or criteria that might be posted, as Amy mentioned. So keep a lookout for that. Do due diligence around researching it.
So now I'll turn it over to Sophia, who will be soliciting any questions that you guys may have. And there are also a number of like UChicago Environmental Alliance members in the audience. So for those of you with UCF, feel free to jump in and answer any questions as well.
All right, so yeah, for questions, if you have one, you can either use the raise hand feature in the participants feature, or you can send me something by chat. But I see Aman has a question. Can I ask yours?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the info. Actually, I have two quick questions. One, regarding this statement of interest. So I think I have missed when this was mentioned, but what exactly are we supposed to put in our statement of interest? Is there any template for that? And what kind of information are you looking uh, as part of that document?
Yeah, so in terms of a statement of the statement of interest for the Green Fund or for the review board?
Green Fund.
Yeah, so in terms of both the summary and the statement, it's essentially just an overview of why you're doing this, why you're interested in it, your background, what connection do you have with the project you're doing, and then also any additional information that you see as being fit for sharing with the reviewers. So again, that's a general overview because again, there's more project descriptions and impact metrics and timelines that go into the details of the project. So the purpose statement of the executive summary is more so giving a qualitative idea of what your project is and why you're doing it, why you're interested in doing it. There's no, as of right now, there is no formula for that. Of course, I think it follows regular things that you could regular formats that you would find through UCI. So any of those would apply here as well.
So thanks for this clarification. So just a quick follow-up question. So you mentioned that in statement of interest, you have to indicate what projects you are currently doing. So is that project supposed to be something related to what you want to propose as part of the Green Fund? Or so for instance, I have a couple of ideas and I would like to pitch those ideas for this Green Fund. But those project ideas are more like at the conceptual stage. So I just want to know whether you need to have a proof of concept beforehand in order to apply for that for the Green Fund, or is it just we can have an idea and we can just pitch through our statement of interest?
That's a great question. I think our vision for the Green Fund was that it is like a catalyst for students' ideas without, a lot of barriers between that, because we want these projects to be actualized. So for the application, we don't necessarily need to see a proof of concept, especially for projects, but for research, since you do have to submit like the potential like mentor section for that, it would kind of be what you would call proof of concept, where you have at least talked through what you want to, like the research that you want to pursue with your mentor, and you have confirmation from them that they're willing to mentor you if you're submitting a research proposal. But as for projects, there doesn't necessarily have to be proof of concept. And as long as your statement or your grant proposal is clearly written with all the criteria that we'll be releasing, and it's very clear, I think that's sufficient for the reviewers who will be looking at your proposal.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Just another question. So, can an individual or a team submit more than 2 proposals uh, as part of the statement of interest? Basically, can I submit 2 separate applications?
I would say this is not something I think that we've thought about. I would say we would probably want to limit the number of applications per person to 1 every application cycle. I think you should spend all of your time finalizing and making your proof of concept as real as possible, and also something that could be actualized during the term of the grant. So if you're having 2 proposals and you're not really spending the full amount of time that you can on 1. So I think I would recommend that you submit 1 per quarter, and if you aren't successful the first time and you don't want to go with that idea anymore, go to the other idea that you have and submit again. But I would say we are expecting 1 per person.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, are there any other questions?
We couldn't have answered all of the questions. This is
Yeah, we did
impossible.
speed through that pretty fast. So yeah, but last call for questions.
If people have questions after this session, who should they contact and how should they submit those questions? That might be something to end with.
I'm happy to take questions via my email. I can write it in the chat here.
And we'll send the recording to all the people who signed up and RSVP'd for the event. So you'll have a copy of the recording. And I believe we'll also be posting this on the Green Fund website. Okay, great. If there aren't any questions at the moment, we will wrap it up. So thank you everyone again for attending this. This is very exciting. The first time the school has, put something together like this in terms of like a sustainability grant. So we're really excited, and yeah, like we all mentioned, feel free to reach out to Sophia via her email, and make sure to follow the UChicago Environmental Alliance Facebook page for fast updates. Great, thank you everyone. Yeah, I feel free to head out now. We can hang around for a few more minutes if you want to ask questions more privately. Thanks everyone.
Bye.